Another video coming to you from Athens, Tennessee. I'm at the farm of Charles Mayfield, Mayfield Pastures. And in today's video, we're going to talk about grazing in tall grass. Really tall grass. How tall? Watch and you'll see. Charles has an amazingly tall field of Johnson grass. In some spots it's 7 feet tall. It's over my head. You'll see it in this video coming up. It's an amazing patch of land here that he's working with, and he's slowly trying to regenerate that pasture to knock down the Johnson grass and let some of the orchard grass and other species come through. He's doing that with rotational grazing, and one cool tool he's using to do that is a Kiwi Tech wire reel that has the post and the reel all in one. In this video, you'll see how he's using this innovative tool to save a bunch of time and labor and trips across the field, which means wear and tear on his body. With that, let's get into it. And we're not gonna start here in this tall grass. Instead, we're gonna start in where the cattle are now, and you'll see how they've taken tall grass like this into a much shorter pasture. Here we go.
You were kind of explaining to us here, like you're doing a weekly setup and then you're doing additional grass?
So I set up, so I don't have buried water here. So moving water is a difficult, I mean, you guys saw the big water over there. I have a small tote up here because I've been doing batches of deworm water, so it's just easier to mix that in a 200-gallon tote and bring it over here and plug it in. But moving water is very labor intensive for me. I can't just empty the tank, move it 50 yards, and fill it back up with a hose. So what I do, you do the best you can, right? It's not perfect, but it's good, is I'll put the water at the top of the hill. Yeah. I'll give them a day and a half's worth of grass.
Coming down the hill?
And so, well, they're down here right now because of the shade. Right. Which is the reason why I'm putting the shade structure together, because when the sun gets overhead, they're gonna go from there to the very, very, very top left corner where there's just an inkling of shade, and you can see a puddle of urine up there, okay? So anyway, so they start at the top of the hill, and you'll see I've got the next paddock set up, and we're gonna try and move them into it today. And so what I do is, instead of going out, down, and out, I just zigzag my line. So I've got 2 cross fences running from the top fence to this bottom fence, which we don't have a fence on this creek. So I just ran a single wire there, and that runs all the way down probably 250 yards. So that's my bottom fence the whole time. So I got a bottom fence, a top permanent fence, and then I've got 2.
So you made this great big wide strip, and then are you then kind of cross fencing and letting them work themselves down the hill every day or 2 days?
Every day or 2, I'll come over here and open up some new grass for them.
Okay. Yeah, there you go.
And so they'll spend a week. They've spent 1 week on this patch of land, which is kind of fun that you guys are here, because this is where they started, and this is the first time they've been back. And when we get up there, you'll see this Johnson grass. I mean, it's 7 feet tall, and they just mow it down. It's awesome.
A lot of conventional farmers look at Johnson grass as a weed, and something that's bad, and it is invasive. And I don't like to admit this, but I've got a little bit of it in my hayfield, and I don't like that. But cows love it. It's a corn relative, and I was actually reading on this just a couple of weeks ago. Johnson grass was actually the first quick-growing annual that was intentionally imported into the United States as a
cattle feed.
To plant into areas where they were having issues, and they needed something to grow fast for the cows to be able to graze on, and that was Johnson grass. And I remember when I first started farming, our tenant farmer said, "Oh, you need to go spray. You got to get rid of that Johnson grass." I'm like, well, but when I turn the cows in, they go bonkers for it.
It's actually about 30 acres, but it's on both sides of the creek. But this field, and then there's a tree line there, and then there's a next field behind that, and then it's about 20 acres all in, which is more than enough land for these cows. And they're going to stay here indefinitely. So right now, I'm carrying water over to them. They're eating grass. All the fencing is portable, but there's really no reason to leave here with them. This is actually one of the few fields on our farm that hasn't been hayed and hasn't been row cropped. So it's sort of been fallow, but it hadn't been sprayed, or it hadn't been, the carbon stayed here. I mean, Dad bush hogged. Actually, they were really happy. Talk about nook and crannying and try to figure out what works. Dad was thrilled for me to come over here with the cows, because the only thing they were doing over here was bush hogging it, which cost diesel fuel and time and all that. Yep. So now I'm here, and it's great. So what we're gonna try to do today, it's pretty hot. I'm sure I can get the cows to move up and across, but we're gonna move them over into the new paddock, and then I thought I'd set up, I've got my fencing system set up to sort of show you how it lays out. I think you'll be pretty impressed.
All right, so let's take a look at it.
Cool. Okay, so I do have to give credit to Heather at Polyface Farms. I went up to visit Heather. I was nervous about getting cows, and took a trip to Polyface earlier in February to spend a half a day with their off-farm beef manager, Heather, and single gal running 750 head, 450 in a cow-calf, and then about 300 stockers, 2 different groups. And we got out in the field, and she was setting up fences, and she had this is Kiwi Tech. I'm like, where in the world did you get that? That's amazing. And Salatin and Daniel and Joel, they use galvanized pipe and regular wire, which is heavier and a little bit more difficult. And Heather was like, you know, I really needed something lighter. And it's out of Australia, New Zealand, obviously. It's a grass-fed business. Those guys know how to do grass-fed beef. And it's a really cool system. This is their 2-wire system, so I can set up 1, 2, 3, or 4-wire fence. I've got the pulleys up there so with 2 wires I can set up 4. So I could do a vertical stake, you know, in the ground, set up 2 pulleys, run the 2 wires through the 2 pulleys, and so as I walk, I'm pulling 4 strings, not 2. Fortunately, my calves have gotten big enough, and they might slip under the single wire now, but they don't go very far. So I've just in the last month graduated from a 2-wire perimeter to a single wire, which is great. But anyway, I thought what we'd do today is I'd sort of show you how this thing works. It's a little pricey in the world of fencing, but a lot of that price is built around the shipping from Australia, and they do ship direct. You used to have to work through a dealer in the US. But man, the time it takes to put this stuff out is insanely quick.
Let's do it.
All right.
Is this the grass Salatin was talking about that you could tie off a horse's back?
You know what? It's probably a relative of. I mean, this Johnson grass, when we get up into the top paddock where they're going, it's 7 feet tall right now, and it's just sprouted seeds. So yeah, this stuff, I mean, I found a stalk the other day. I think, Darby, you were mentioning this is sort of a corn relative. I found a stalk the other day that the cows had shimmed down to about a 2-foot stalk, and I'm not kidding you, it was an inch in diameter. So,
and where we're standing at right now, Charles, how long has it been since the cows were last here?
They were on this spot 5 weeks ago.
So this is the regrowth in 5 weeks.
In 5 weeks.
Right.
5 weeks of regrowth.
And they'll be back here in, well, we're setting, so there'll be a 6 week, actually, technically it's 6 weeks tomorrow. And then it'll be 7 weeks because they'll spend a week in that paddock. And then so it'll be, I think.
It'll be about 8 weeks before they make it all the way around.
Make it all the way around.
So 56-day rotation.
Which is a little long.
Well, here's a question for both of you. I mean, like the regenerativist in me looks at this and is like, holy shit, look at all the biomass. From a grazing standpoint, how is this?
You know, I mean, from a grazing standpoint, I mean, this isn't bad. The cows are going to go nuts on this Johnson grass. You've got some fescues in here, and actually I'm looking over here, and you do have a little bit of orchard grass right here. So the good news is that as he rotates the cows through here, and by the time the cows get here, this orchard grass, well, here's one right behind it. It's already seeded out.
Yep.
So they're going to come through here, they're going to knock that down, that grass seed's going to hit the ground. Now with the orchard grass, it's going to take probably about 2 years, but they're going to start self-seeding some orchard grass in here. And I expect, even if Charles didn't do anything, when he comes back in here next spring, particularly back over here closer to the road, you're probably going to start seeing some native clovers, probably some Dutch white clover, maybe not red clovers, but some of the smaller leaf, shorter Dutch white clover is going to start moving in because they've been in here knocking stuff down, knocking stuff down, knocking stuff down. Now that clover's got an opportunity to germinate and come up because you've started keeping this tall stuff that crowds it out at bay. And as I look down here, I mean, the biomass where you've come through here and grazed, I mean, this is what's laying down below, and this is already breaking down. You've got really good soil organic matter here. I
think so too. Like I said, this is one of the fields that's relatively been fallow.
Yep. It's kind of funny. The conventional world, they look at this and they immediately think, I've got to get herbicide.
Grazon. I got to spray Grazon.
And as a 100% grass-fed grazer, you look at this and you just smile from ear to ear. And if you want to do some annual seeding headed into winter, I'd probably tell you to go ahead and come in here. You're gonna need to get all this under control anyway. You bush hog it. That doesn't sound super regenerative. But you come in here and you bush hog it. You don't want stubble left more than about 3 or 4 inches tall. And you no-till drill in, some turnips. You could do a cereal rye. You can do all kinds of things for them to graze on.
Okay.
But boy, cows, from what I've talked to some other guys that have done it, they love turnips.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I mean, looking at this, you bush hog this, you're gonna have a.
Yeah. Well, he'd graze it. He'd graze it as close as he could, like headed into October, and get it relatively under control, or maybe late September. You're kind of pushing the envelope of when you want to seed turnips. But he'd graze it with the cows, and then he'd come in and get, if there's still some stubble, he'd come in and hit that with the bush hog, mulch it up. And then you run the no-till drill right behind that and get some winter grazing.
I'll have to talk to Dad. We've got rock all in here, and so I need to flag all that. Dad calls it upcropping rock. I think it's soil eroding rock. But we'd have to flag all that because the last thing I want to do is break a large piece of equipment.
Well, yeah, so your other option would be to get just a 3-point seed spreader.
Oh yeah.
Spread that, come in here with a cultipacker.
Oh yeah.
And
or just get
cultipack it.
Cut down one of these honey locusts and drag it behind the truck.
I'd get a cultipacker.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm going to set this up. So I'm going to set up in a single wire. This is an end post, and there's a really cool feature about this Kiwi Tech. Actually, I'm going to set it up on the other side here. All right, so it's got this spring system. So I basically just interlay and weave through this sort of labyrinth of. All right, so there it is. All right, I pull it tight. It cinches the line tight. Now the magic of this is when I get to the other end and I'm ready to take the fence down, I can pull from the other end of the fence, pull on this and hold for about 2 seconds, and about 3 pulls, and the way this spring locking mechanism works, it will release the wire. And then it's on this thing, it's got a
saves you a trip walking to the other end.
Saves you a trip, so you roll it up from one end and then you just walk down and collect your stakes. So it's a one trip kind of deal. And the other nice thing about it, so it's got an adjustable chock on it. So right now it's open. I can squeeze it tight and it cinches up around the spool for reeling it in, but for letting it out it's loose. So it's just gonna spin. And the way these, again, imagine a double wire. I've got it all set up for double wire. But the way these attachments work, so here we go, it's on, and I walk, pull, twist, and it's ready to go. And as I walk, I just step in, grab another one, up, twist, and away we go. And I mean, it's pretty quick, man. I mean, it took me a couple of times to sort of get to know it. Yep.
Put that one in. I gotta draw the tripod up.
Yep. It took me about 3 or 4 trips to get efficient. Well, I've got 300 meter spools, so I can lay out about 300 meters of fence in about 10 minutes. If that. I haven't really timed myself since I've got really good at it. And the funny thing is, I'm not really ever laying out that much wire. Okay, so these little end clips with the Kiwi Tech system, you can mount them to fence posts, or if you had a woven wire fence, or in this case, I'm actually going to eventually run this up to our barbed wire fence to end it, but you can just clip this thing in, and it has a wire clamp. So if you can imagine, I guess I can illustrate it using the wire, but if you've got a fence running this way, then you just clip it in that way, and then you just sort of bend it in there, and it hangs off the woven wire fence, and then you just pull it off, which is pretty handy dandy. And this is the same end unit, you know, that we tied the rope to with the spring to unlock it. So all I do is just cinch it up tight and clip it on here, and there's our fence. It's not rocket science. I mean, it's a little awkward to hold, but once you sort of get comfortable
right
with this position.
I mean, I don't dislike the system we use at home now, but you're walking twice.
And it adds up.
Which, if you're only going 200 feet, it's not that big of a deal, but I'm thinking about, we've got some times when we're like building a laneway to move the cows a long distance. You're walking twice, 600, 800 feet.
Yeah.
I mean, you cut that in half. If you're starting to do larger grazing operations, or particularly where I see this being a big advantage, is that this is a temporary internal fence.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't something we're setting up and taking down every day. So you can subdivide large areas if you don't have your internal fence together yet.
Yeah.
This is a great solution for temporary internal fence to bust stuff up, so you're then strip grazing.
And I've even played around with the daily paddocks using this to set up and then take down. So imagine, you know, this is our weak paddock here, and I've got another spool that's connected, and it zigzags through the paddock, so it's time to open up some more grass. I'll come take that spool off, lock it on here. It's a little bit more involved because I'm rolling it up and collecting stakes,
yeah,
but it's still one trip instead of roll the wire up, collect the stakes. So
yeah, it all kind of depends on your application, but I mean, this has really got some merit to it.
It's slick, man. Crazy, isn't it?
It is crazy.
Well, come on down here and I'll show you what. Okay, so it's been about 7 to 8 weeks since the cows have grazed this particular area. Some of this is knocked down from rolling my waterer through, and I actually use a truck to knock down paths to put my fence up because the grass is so tall. But most of this is Johnson grass. We've got some other stuff, you know, growing in and around, but they're about to come into here. But let's go take a look at where they've been and sort of the mowing capacity of 6 mamas and 6 babies. So we're actually gonna move these cows today. And here's our fence. I'm just gonna step over, and you kind of get a really good feel for before and after, like right here. I've got a great picture I posted on Instagram of Adeline and I standing right here, and you didn't see any of this, but.
How long have they been in there?
They've been in this paddock, this full paddock, for a week, so they've technically spent an entire week up here. This is the only shade they've got, unfortunately, right now, from about 10 a.m. or 11, what is it, 11:30, until from about 11 until 1, there's a glimmer of shade up here. So I've got a shade structure I'm working on right now to get them out, to sort of spread their urine and manure out where I want it, strategically placing that kind of stuff. But for right now, they've torn this corner up pretty good. But yeah, we're gonna keep this water here. All I'll do is move the fence over onto the other side of the water that's there. I'll move my mineral box. So this is just free choice minerals, sea salt, the Sea Agra 90, kelp, and poultry NutriBalancer. free choice.
And why are you putting the poultry NutriBalancer in for your cows? I've never heard that before.
I haven't either, and this is one of those things where I just say, that's what Joel does, and it works pretty well for him. And I asked him why, and he said, well, we've just found that the mineral makeup of the poultry works better because they run cows and chickens together, and so the grass gets a little bit more of what it needs to feed the poultry, mineral speaking wise, and the cows seem to love it. So it's a win-win-win. You know this, Darby, it just takes one. As soon as the first one comes across, I don't know how they'll react to that hose. Come on, girls. Come on, keep going. Moving cows is tough, guys. Good girls.
Yeah, one of the things I like about cows is that, you know, they pretty much do all the work for you.
That's exactly right. So here's the other thing I love about this fence. I mean, this isn't really specific to kiwi much, it's just more portable fences. I'm just gonna move this post around here, block off that water, and then I'm just gonna unroll it back out. Observation, you got some observations?
Well, yeah, just one main observation, which you're probably already aware of, because we're seeing a lot of, obviously, Johnson grass, a lot of fescue, so we've got lots and lots of carbohydrates, lots of energy out here. The lack of legumes, you can kind of see a little bit in the cows. Now, I think part of what I'm seeing is that they're a bit framier than my cows. But I think definitely, I mean, if it were me, I'd be looking to maybe even this fall, if you do come in and do any kind of seeding, or at the very latest, do some early spring or frost seeding, I definitely would try and get some legumes up here to get your protein content up. And like I said, a lot of that's probably going to come back in. It's not here because these big tall species have crowded it out. And now that the cows are coming through here, you'll probably see it start coming back naturally. But if this is going to be your predominant grazing area, my suggestion would be to give it a shot in the arm, spend some money on some clover, alfalfa if you're comfortable with that, and you know, different varieties. You can get some red clovers are going to come up a little faster. White clovers are going to come up a little bit later as you head into, you know, late spring, early summer. Alfalfas tend to kind of bridge the gap. You know, they're more there like all year long almost, just to get some legumes in here. So yeah, that's just one suggestion. You know, because you've got cows here, obviously you've got mamas and little babies. The babies are getting most of their protein requirements from mama, but as they go into next year, you're going to want those proteins out here for them to really start building muscle and frame. And it will. The reason that's important, beyond just the health of the cows, is the quality of the meat.
Yeah.
That's the big thing. I mean, my front pasture that I started with kind of looked like this, and I kind of did this whole, well, you know, the clovers will eventually show up thing, and we had some quality beef for a while. So kind of what I wanted to point out here, we hadn't intended to shoot this, but we're walking out, we thought we were done, and we'd just been talking up at the top of the hill about how in time we'll probably start to see some clovers come back because this big tall carbonous stuff is getting knocked down. And we're walking through here, and we stop, and I'm talking with Charles, and I look down, and Charles has got the first clover plant that he's really ever seen up here. And this is just what the rotational mob grazing is doing, is that, you know, this stuff is in the seed bank. So it's going to come back. What I was telling Charles is I would still consider coming in here and spending a few bucks on some seed to get more of it, because clover is so beneficial when you're doing 100% grass-fed beef. But just wanted to point out that nature's already taken its course, and we're starting to see some clover come back into an area that hasn't had it in a very, very long time. So, you know, this really does work, and just wanted to point that out as we were walking out here.
There you have it, Charles Mayfield grazing the jungle effectively. It's amazing to see that this paddock has been grazed for just 1 week. And then we go around to this paddock right here, where I won't even move the tripod, and we have this area, which has already been grazed this year. It's been rested for 7 or 8 weeks, and it's now 7 feet tall in some places. So he's continuing to build soil this way. He knows it's not optimum right now, but he's working to try and get it better, to introduce legumes, to change the grass species in here. But one thing he's trying to do is reduce soil erosion. And one way to do that is to keep it green, keep biomass on here. Because even though the cattle that are on here, they might not eat all of this down, they're trampling a lot of it. They're putting a lot of manure onto the ground. That's creating a lot of biomass, coverage of soil. There's not much bare soil here. And anywhere you look, you're pulling up a lot of litter, which is insulating the soil from the hot Tennessee sun that's above us this time of year in July, and that's gradually building soil and slowing down erosion over time. With the cattle moving through here and some mechanical intervention via maybe seeding or some other method, he can come in here and slowly try and change the species makeup of the pasture in here and ultimately get it better and better. These systems just improve over time, and it all comes down to smart management. There's not really a lot of high tech going on here. Now the Kiwi Tech reel that he uses is absolutely brilliant. That's a huge time saver and labor saver, limiting your trips across the field and making things faster and more efficient, but that's not what makes the system work. That's just a tool that enables the methodology of rotational grazing to work. It makes rotational grazing easier. It's the method, it's that base principle of moving cattle from small cells over a period of time. That's what's important, that's what's building soil, and that's not what every grazer does, but the ones that choose to go this path, this is how they're doing it, and this is just one of the battles that they're fighting, trying to take a pasture that wasn't grazed rotationally for a long time and slowly convert it over to one that's optimum for cattle. It's not easy, but with enough dedication, work, it works. And in the meantime, he's got cattle out here. He's gonna have grass-fed beef, both for his family and to sell and help build his farm. If you want to learn more about Charles, check him out on Instagram, the link's below. If you want to learn more about grazing animals on grass, check out the podcast that Darby and I do, link below on that. Until next time, it's Diego coming to you from Tennessee. Enjoy life, live it up, enjoy the summer sun while we got it, and be nice, be thankful, and do the work.